Hello, everyone. Welcome. Obviously, the Florida House had a big day on the floor today. We passed Senate Bill 72 off the floor. We're excited about the legislation that we crafted with our partners in the Senate in a collaborative way to protect businesses and our healthcare heroes. We had made a commitment really early on that this was something that we would tackle early on in session. You'll recall several weeks ago, the House passed business liability off the floor. That bill went to the Senate. We collaborated with the Senate on a product to deal with the healthcare issues around COVID liability. That was put on the Senate version of the bill and sent back. And today, Chair Colleen Burton, who's chair of our HHS committee, presented that bill, and it received a bipartisan support from members of both parties. We also had a vigorous debate over House Bill 1, lots of passionate debate both from Republicans and Democrats. Everyone, of course, has the right to have their voices heard, and I think that was done here in the Florida House. I think in large measure, members, respected each other, respected the decorum of the House, and we've now passed that bill onto the floor and off to the Senate. As you all know, this week our budget committees met. They rolled out a budget that met the goals that we all talked about and laid out. Ours is a budget that prepares us today for a better tomorrow. Myself and Chairman Trumbull have said this numerous times, but this was supposed to be an outlook of what the state looks like in 30 years, not just what it looks like tomorrow. I think our chairs did a great job with Chairman Trumbull's leadership. And this is the beginning of the budget process. I think you guys have probably heard that ad nauseum this week from everyone in the building. This is based on our revenue estimates. Obviously, we expect another revenue estimate to come out April 6th as we come towards conference with the Senate to figure out what our budget will ultimately look like. We obviously have to get those additional estimates in order to have an accurate budget reflection. As I mentioned before, our budget reflects the values that are important to our chamber, making investments on critical long-term needs, including record levels of reserves in our budget, I believe in excess of $5 billion into our state reserve. We restored the Transportation Trust Fund in our budget, which hopefully will help those transportation projects that are so needy across the state. We address challenges for homeowners and property owners. We want folks to have access to quality water. We want people to live in communities that aren't attacked by sea level rise and flooding. We address that in our budget. As many of you covered the other day, we extended in our Medicaid conforming bill the time period for health care for mothers. It was 2 months under Medicaid. It's been that way since 1976. Under our Medicaid conforming bill with the work of Chair Burton and Representative Camilla Brown, we've looked to extend that from 2 months to 12 months so that mothers and their babies are covered for the first year of their life. We want people to come back to Florida, and I think our budget reflects that as well. You'll see in our budget record investments and money in beach restoration to let people know that we're open for business, that we're going to continue to let shine the things that make people want to come here to Florida. Chair Trumbull, of course, is here with us, joining us as the budget rolls out over the next couple of days to answer any questions you have on the budget. Our PCB will roll out tomorrow. So with that, we'll take your questions.
Is there any plans to look at increasing unemployment benefits at this point?
Yeah, that question's asked every gaggle, I think, and the answer's still the same, which is, we want to take a holistic look at our workforce. This is, one of those times where we're coming out of COVID. Unemployment was extremely high during the lockdowns and the pandemics. It's come down. We have rolled out robust bills that deal with getting people back into the workforce, and that has been our focus.
Speaker, HB 1 obviously facing some new challenges over in the Senate. Some people are saying that it could be dead on arrival already. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, I'll let the Senate talk about their process. I'm happy to talk about the bill, happy to talk about the House process.
The revenue estimate that comes out on April 6th, are you anticipating there's going to be a lot more money for you to have and negotiate, as opposed to we're seeing some cuts in certain areas of the budget, both budgets. I'm trying to get an idea of how real are those cuts at this point if you get a bunch of money in the new estimate.
Well, Chairman Trumbull and I wish we had a crystal ball to let you know exactly what we think it's going to be. I think we both would agree that it's going to be a higher number than we had originally anticipated, which has been consistent over the last several months. I think we were all worried about another surge in cases and how that may affect it, but that hasn't happened. So it's our hope that it's going to be, significantly higher, but we don't know yet. Once those numbers come out, we'll base our budget on real numbers. One of the things that we said really, really early on is that we're not going to make fake assumptions about what things might look like or what kind of reimbursement we might get from FEMA and the federal government. We're going to do it based on whether it's the number of kids we have in K-12 or whether or not, what we know that our estimates will be. So we'll see.
Are you anticipating Are you anticipating, say, a month from now, when you guys are trying to bring the budget in for landing, that you're going to have enough clarity on this federal money in terms of the guideline, how you can use it again, I'm trying to get an idea of how much what we're seeing now is going to change in this next month.
I think, and Chairman, feel free to hop in here, but I think we have some reasonable clarity as to how much we expect based on the federal stimulus money, which I think is what you're talking about. And we've also reflected that in our budget of what we believe is coming down from the federal government. We think that in our budget, you will see things like a $3.5 billion investment from the federal stimulus money into deferred maintenance of all of our state-owned facilities throughout the state. You know, again, we talked about how, we're working today to prepare our state for a better tomorrow in this budget. And part of that is doing some of the things that might not be terribly sexy, but are really important for our long-term future. So, you see a $3.5 billion investment of federal money to take care of the things we own now. Our state facilities that are in disrepair, are not in a good shape, that are on our bottom line of things we're going to have to take care of. So we invested in that. We invested, $1 billion into an emergency preparedness fund. That's something that I've talked about since the designation. Chair Trumbull has worked on, the idea being that if and when emergencies happen, whether they are, God forbid, another pandemic, or more likely a hurricane or weather event, that we have that fund set aside in addition to our reserves to make sure that we're prepared to immediately respond to that event. Nobody understands that better than Chairman Trumbull, who of course lived in the Panhandle during Hurricane Michael. So that's something that is reflected in our budget. Our commitments to resiliency, to coastal flooding is also reflected. Record funding for beaches, record funding for our state parks, all those things that make people want to come to Florida. Yeah.
Even with all of the cuts, especially in Medicaid and whatnot, there are a number of projects that you can see, local projects that are in each of the silos. Is that going to be, is that a sign that maybe things are good and you guys are planning for more money to come in? I mean, is that, or, I guess, would it be prudent to have those member projects in there if we're cutting?
No, I appreciate you asking about projects. I guess it depends on who you ask, Eric. I think that we have the lowest number of member projects funded in this budget in any time in recent memory. We had more, so I think that's been verified that we've looked in the past. We had made a real conscious effort with our members going into this budget year to be very conscious about the kinds of requests they made. It is absolutely a testament to the members that we had the lowest number, money and number, of requests that we've had in any time in recent memory, and this budget that Chairman Trumbull has rolled out has the lowest number of dollar amount of member projects that are funded in the budget.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to follow up on that very point. Trying to get a sense of, the governor asked that maybe you could do the revenue estimating conference a little bit earlier so that maybe this wouldn't have to be a cuts budget. You and Senator Simpson chose not to do that, and I'm trying to figure out what was the reasoning. And I'm wondering if part of it is, if you have more money, then you maybe will get more requests for projects. Is that part of why you chose to make this look like a cuts budget that will now be replenished with some of the...
No, it's not nearly that interesting. It really has to do with the closer in time that we have a revenue estimate to the actual budget that we're going to pass off the House floor and adjourn for the session, the more accurate that it will be. So the longer in session, so in this case April 6th, the later the date, the more accurate the picture. So President Simpson and I had a desire to build a final budget that had the most accurate estimating conference and build our budget around that. So it made sense to push it off. If we had done it earlier, this budget may have looked differently, but it also would have been less accurate.
Speaker, I know it might depend on the new revenue estimates when they come out, but given the cuts that are in both budgets at this point, how much are you looking at, and how likely is it that the House at least will include tax cuts beyond just, I know the unemployment ones that I know we always usually traditionally do, the back to school and I'm talking about like more than that.
Yeah.
Is it likely that we'll have some and what would those look like?
Well, you're referring to I think the online sales tax with the $4.5 billion tax cut for small businesses based on the unemployment trust fund, which of course is out there. Look, Chairman Payne's committee, the tax committee is looking at that, and obviously as we get our revenue estimating conference, we'll have a better answer for what that looks like. Obviously, we want to continue to be committed to things like back-to-school sales tax holidays and things like that really help Floridians as they take their kids back to school. So that'll be something we'll look at as we get our revenue estimate.
Speaker Sprouse, there's a bill moving through both chambers that would stop transgender kids from playing in women's sports, and similarly to legislation moving through many states. In South Dakota, I believe, South Dakota, the bill was watered down by the governor after the NCAA got involved and said we're not going to have events here if you sign this into law and include NCAA athletes. Do you support the legislation, and have you had similar conversations with people that are threatening to pull investments from Florida if it passes?
I haven't had any conversations like that. I absolutely support the bill. I think Representative Tuck has done an amazing job explaining how some of the impacts on particularly boys playing girls sports have disenfranchised girls from scholarship opportunities or success opportunities in sports. I think it's a valuable conversation, and I support the legislation.
Last question on, I think it was yesterday, but I forget the bill number, it was like 699. What happened with that? It seemed like it was ready for the floor, it got kicked back to the PI committee. It's on campaign finance, stuff to do with,
Representative Payne's bill? I remember we sent it back to the Public Integrity and Elections Committee. There may have been a desire. I think that there wasn't a Senate companion to that bill, if I remember correctly. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I think that if I remember correctly, there wasn't a Senate companion to that bill, so there might be some desire to look at connecting it to bills that are moving in the Senate. Any other questions?
Can I get you to talk a little bit about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? And
Sure.
your decision to shift that money yet again into other, first of all, talk to me about how much you support the Septic to Sewer initiative of Senate President, as well as taking the money from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Why do you support both of those ideas?
Well, I support the ideas because I think they reflect the priorities of all Floridians. We have a dedicated revenue stream into dock stamps into the Sadowski Trust Fund for housing. As you know, that the rolling average, Chairman Trumbull will tell me if I'm wrong, is about $160 million over the last 5 years that has been funded in Sadowski. There has been a continuous need to balance the priorities of the state. I think that both the Senate President and I agree that affordable housing is a priority for Floridians. We also agree that clean water is a huge priority for Floridians, which is why we did the septic to sewer conversion. I think everyone knows that the septic tanks create water quality issues for us across the state. Our rivers and waterways take those issues all across our state and impact all Floridians. So we need to get ahead of that problem. Unfortunately, it's an expensive problem. And it's not going to be enough to just say to the locals, hey, you do it on your own. They don't have the money to do that. So we want to get in the game to help Floridians on clean water and water issues. And then lastly, we all know that we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to preparing for sea level rise and coastal flooding as a state. We need to aggressively be in a position to tackle that. You can't throw in non-recurring revenue to tackle that kind of problem. It has to be a long-term commitment on behalf of the state to do that. We have Representative Demi Busada Cabrera's bill that is moving called the Always Ready bill that helps us prepare for coastal flooding and sea level rise. It has a process in there that allows for a 1-to-1 match from the local governments so that we can really begin to fund these projects similarly to how we do it in the DOT work plan every year. So that is why we did that. I think that this reflects that all of those things are important. Also in Chairman Trumbull's budget that he rolled out, there's also additional money that was put into to all 3 of those programs. So I think it's been said that while the third recurring is at $141 million in Sadowski, I think the ultimate number that's reflected in the House budget is $280 million. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.